I want to actually pay a bot to troll Dave's comments. Like
100%.
every time
That's what
Dave
I'm
comments
saying.
on anybody else's post, the bot, like I'm in control of the bot and I can change the bot. So it could be the funny bot one time or the sexy bot the other time.
Well, it's also just like, it's so, liking every one of your spouse's posts is just a lot of work, right? Like, I just like I would be Instagram would do this tomorrow. It's not even an AI thing. It's just like, there should just be a button, which is like, just auto like the following people's posts.
Ooh, that's good.
Right?
Hello, gentlemen. It's Britt, your moderator today. It's one
Oh my
on
God,
two.
we're all so terrified. Where is Jessica?
Jessica is at the worst place in the world. Can anyone guess? Actually, you already know, but I'll let the listeners take 1 second to guess. You're right. It's the DMV, the absolute worst place in the world. And the place that, if you've listened in the past, Sam actually wants to abolish because of digitized digitized identity, right?
Look, for years, we would have these meetings at Facebook being like, we need to figure out what companies to acquire. And like, I always thought these meetings were a little bit stupid, but my answer was always the same, which is we need to buy the DMV. I was like working on identity. I was like, this is so obvious. And candidly, I think had Facebook bought the DMV a long time ago, the world would be a better place. We'd have better online identity, and maybe we'd be a little bit safer from some of the crazy interference we see these days in social media.
And most importantly, we would have Jessica here today rather than me moderating. But I'm going to try to keep you two in line. I really don't know where this episode's going to go.
Yeah, this might not work. I think we're all a little nervous.
Last week was a little bit of a banger, guys. So for anyone who didn't listen last week, we thought we were on maybe a Thanksgiving break, and then the OpenAI saga started the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, and by day 4 or 5, we were like, we've got to do a podcast episode about this, and we all made some predictions of what was going on and what was about to happen, and literally like later that night, I think Sam came back to OpenAI.
Look, the story is not fully written yet, but there's no question that it was a hell of a period in a moment. And I will say we had a lot of feedback on that podcast, both good and bad, is what I would say.
How would you summarize the feedback, Sam?
Well, I think a lot of people agree with us, and a lot of people challenged, I think, some of the things that we were pushing on. I think the thing I would clarify from it, because I think some people maybe missed the memo, was just to be clear, it's not that every person working on AI safety is bad or a cult leader. That's not true. There's lots of very nice people and very good people and serious academics who do work on this stuff. And it's an interesting and important set of problems in the long term. I would just say that at the same time, it is also not true that to say that no one working on AI is doing it from a self-interested perspective, and no one who's saying AI safety is kind of the most important thing is doing it from pure reasons. So I think, the reality is with any of these cult-driven things is, the second you get into the model of let's build a thing to save us from the thing, or the second you get into the kind of deifying AI, I think there's obviously ample ground for good and ample ground for bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and to jump off from that, I made the comment that this deification comment that AI, and in particular AGI, is this thing that has been deified to the point where we're kind of talking about it as something that will, destroy humanity on the one hand, potentially take away every job. There's like a lot of doom and gloom. There's also a lot of here's all the things that might become possible. And my comments around this were actually totally unrelated to the AI safety community. And some folks really took it that way. And my angle on this is much more focused on not what AI can or might do. I actually think that the AI safety community is doing quite a good job. They're very pragmatic. There's like a lot of very smart people, and the debate is robust and rigorous. The question I'm much more interested in is what can't AI do? And when you start to deify a technology, you begin to imagine that it can do everything. And every time a new technology comes along, we get into this. It's like, oh, this technology is going to do everything. And I'm much more interested in what can't it do? We don't have good empirical research in the world around human feelings, for example. We don't understand what feelings are, where they come from. These are completely different things than thoughts and words. We frequently can't even describe how we feel in words to each other. And we're sitting here saying that large language models might become this, amazing, all-powerful, godlike technology. And I'm much more interested in the conversation around what they can't do and what needs to be done in order to better interface with humanity. And I guess that's where I was coming from with a lot of my comments, and I don't think it came across super well. And I'm interested in continuing that conversation.
Hey, you did. It came across.
I think you did
fine.
great, Dave. Yeah,
I think you did a great job, Dave.
I think,
And look, I'll tell you one thing AI can do. It doesn't even need to be AGI. Is it clearly can fuck up our entire world and cause us all to kill each other. So we don't need very sophisticated AI.
But I like your thoughts, Sam. The thoughts that you shared last week privately around like maybe TikToks should be something we are like more concerned about right now than AI, or not more concerned, but like I think there's a level.
Well, TikTok is the version of TikTok is
the version of bad AI that might kill us all, right?
The look again. I'll say it one more time, which is I'm happy that there are some serious people doing real AGI safety work. I also worry that there's a lot of very manipulative people invoking AI safety for their own selfish and dangerous ends. But I will say, all of that aside, it's very obvious, right, that in a much shorter time frame, you can look at something like TikTok as like an ultimate weapon, right, which uses very dirty, simple AI, right, depending on how you define that, and has very, very bad outcomes. If you think about the real story of last week was governance failure, right? It was this idea that you had a for-profit company inside or controlled by a nonprofit board that had interests that were contrary to the for-profit company, right? Like as the setup. It's an even worse version of that is TikTok, right? Because you think about it, what you have with TikTok, again, is a for-profit company, right? That looks perfectly reasonable. They just, get children to scroll on videos infinitely and serve them ads and shopping. But, right, it's very obvious that rolls up to the Chinese government, right? And like the Chinese government has a pretty good history of mucking with things when it's in their interest, right? And so again, like you can show and like TikTok and like anything you want, but it's pretty undeniable that like there's a shadow governance above a Chinese company like that, right? That has a whole other set of interests. So, that doesn't mean that like I think anything is necessarily being nefariously done with TikTok at the moment. In fact, if you thought about it from a purely strategic perspective, you'd say the Chinese probably aren't mucking with TikTok right now because it would be a waste of a hell of a good weapon. But the second they want to go invade Taiwan, which they've said they want to do, you better believe that they will use their for-profit company, right, given their ulterior motives at a higher level, right, to soften the beaches by using AI to just kind of suggest videos in a certain direction that maybe makes some students very upset or like convince them that they do own in Taiwan or should be the people there or we shouldn't fight for it. And then when it goes out, you better believe they'll do everything they can to kind of get people in the streets. And look, we'll see how it all plays out. But you talk about AI and safety and governance. Last week was all about, obviously, the OpenAI version, which is very intellectual and total catnip for the tech community natively. But the real story is TikTok.
I agree with you, by the way. I mean, I actually don't spend any time on TikTok. I feel like I should, but I don't care to. And I'm curious, like, do you two spend time on TikTok every day? And how has it evolved over the last several months?
I went through a TikTok phase, for sure.
I feel like I remember that about you.
It was great.
I don't
this
use
was
TikTok.
Before Instagram Reels. It's like, it's crack. It's wonderful. It's like, it is unabashed, AI-driven entertainment crack, right? And it's great. But it is funny. I mean, like, to me, it's like there's a whole thing. Is it good for you? There's this whole thing where, like, in China, like, it's a totally different product that like promotes different things. And they have like tight controls on it to make sure that they're not like rotting people's brains. I believe it is rotting people's brains. It's very pleasant rot, but it's rotting.
It's pleasant rot like sugar.
All besides the point. What? It's all besides the point. Like people can make their own choices. It's a free country. If you want to spend your time, scrolling, silly videos, some of which are completely hilarious, right? I think the bigger problem is just like, again, like it's like, I'm just worried that all of a sudden when you have a company that rolls up from a governance perspective to a foreign country that explicitly has ambitions to invade neighbors, and we know we can't figure out exactly what's going on, and the product is perfectly tuned for subversion because it's like not even a follow network. It's not even like I follow Dave and news. It's literally just like whatever they want to show me, they show me. Like, and now hundreds of millions of Americans are looking at that every day, and we know that they can be manipulated to be in the streets and cause physical violence and riot and block the government from doing things. Like, that's just crazy.
Well, on one hand, California now is going to make children in school learn how to be media literate, quote unquote, and discern what's real and what's fake.
Oh yeah, that's going to work.
At least it's like the right maybe step
it's a fair
forward.
thing to try to put into the pedagogy, Sam. I mean, it's like, should we teach that as part of the modern canon?
My mother-in-law has been very involved in Generation Citizen, which is trying to teach that as part of it. I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, but I have to believe that, forget AGI, the very, very dirty version of AI that we have with TikTok will defeat the California Public Schools education program on what is real and what is not.
Dave, Dave, what are your thoughts on TikTok being as sort of a hostile and nefarious of a app as Sam believes it is? And
I mean, I agree with Sam. I think I've said this on the pod before, but I mean, I think we should have, if not banned, like severely, reduced TikTok's ability to influence the American audience a long time ago. The method by which we go about doing that, I think, is hard to think through, right? Like, we don't have a great firewall. We have little to no ability to control the bits that come across our borders. We control the atoms that come across our borders pretty aggressively, but the bits, I mean, they basically flow freely. So any country in the world, China or not, can impact our domestic digital border or digital land as much as they want.
Borders.
And kind of, but Dave, I mean, like, that's kind of true. I agree with the big point about the internet, but like when it comes to TikTok, like literally if you want to ban TikTok, all you got to do is get the App Store to kick it out.
Yeah,
right? It's not like
I was going to switch to that. There's
perspective.
practical business, and policy moves that we could make. I guess my answer.
And the business thing is interesting, right? Because you think about, like, I was gonna say, like, TikTok's done a really good job of embedding itself, right? Because you have, like, if you think about it in the order, it's like Apple's not going to kick them out. Apple's China exposure is enormous, right? Like, even if they should, they won't, right? Then you're like, well, what about like their investors? Well, it turns out that like Sequoia is an enormous investor. It's like Reid Hoffman, who's a huge Democratic donor and would have a lot of sway in Washington, as a huge investor. Like, they're all investors, right? And so like it's kind of hard to like go to Washington, as a tech, legend and say kick it out when like it's your money.
So you're saying that Apple
That's
is
fair.
the only opportunity to do this? Apple, Google?
No, he's saying they can't. They're in a leveraged position. Yeah.
Well, then you get to like the government. You're like, can the government do anything? And the reality is like, I think the Republicans clearly would, right? The Democrats, the problem is like they're so beholden to the extreme left, right? And to the left, because they want the votes, right? That like I think it's really hard for them to get up and muster saying like, I'm going to kick out an app that you all like. So it's like they basically have captured by making a product people like on a platform that is beholden to China. Right. With investors that are highly incentivized, to see them succeed, it just becomes like this very difficult thing to figure out the angle.
So if you're saying that TikTok ultimately is going to ruin our 2024 election cycle, we ultimately have venture capital to blame.
Just TikTok.
Well, I don't think,
No.
I think TikTok, so I don't think it will, because I think again, I give the Chinese too much credit. Like, if you have a super weapon, which is you can reach into the minds of 200 million Americans and subtly manipulate them in a direction, right? Using lots of internal tools subtly. And then when you want to do like an invasion, you have like the ability to control the media cycle in the US, right? Like, you wouldn't waste that even on a presidential election, right? Like, you'd want to like be really careful with how you use it, which is my argument why people like, look, I think some of the content on TikTok, especially around the Israel-Hamas conflict, et cetera, is awful, right? But people are like, well, do you think the Chinese are manipulating it? And my general answer was no, because I think they're too smart to do that. Like, why waste the tool, right? But it is kind of wild, right? When you think about the implications of AI, like this is a good example of a thing where AI is quite dangerous, right? And it's not in the pure, HAL form, right? Where some super intelligence is going to drag a black hole over to make more paper clips and accidentally suck the Earth's oceans off. It's more just we now have small groups can undetectedly do things at such scale subtly, right, in ways that I think are really, really dangerous.
And that was going to be one of my answers to the question, Britt, which is I'm actually much more worried about near-term problems from AI. And one of them, there was actually a big article, I think it was in Bloomberg today, about AI porn and how there's a very serious problem already happening in American high schools where you've got people making lewd photos of each other, and you're effectively massively traumatizing young people. And the fact that this isn't even a conversation, and part of this safety conversation to me is a real problem, right? We've got you can have a conversation about what's the probability that AGI takes over and hurts us all. That's a fine philosophical conversation to have, and we should have it, and it's really important. But there are these very near-term things already happening today, which I know people are talking about, but I think that there's potential for some really massive harm, particularly psychological harm, to happen.
So what's the solution? Dave, I'm curious. I think we can all agree. I think one of the things people like to talk about is they like to talk about things in their lane with they think black and white answers that are solvable. I'm actually curious, take this exact thing, which is what do you do about this is an old idea. People have been talking about, I take someone's body and jam it on my friend's head and look at porn of them. This is not a new idea, but it actually is happening now. What do you do about it?
It's a really hard question. I'm not sure. I think
that's part.
It's also so I just did a search on Google for AI porn site, and I mean it's flooded. And then Reddit has
again,
tons
if we're being
of threads
cynical,
about
it's probably the most bullish sign for AI, right? It always starts with porn, right? If it actually works for porn, then it's a thing, right? And so we can,
Wait. Can I tell you one of the website URLs? Ready?
No, don't do it.
Deepfucks.com. I mean, it's kind of clever. It is clever. I got to give them that.
Well, I think there's an interesting thing, which is I would say one is I think one of the reasons you think about people worry about or spend their time focusing on, I do think we live in an era of just things that are very intractable problems. And part of the reason they don't get discussed more is what are you going to do about it? What stand are you willing to take, right? Which says this, you could say, hey, everyone owns their face, right? We're going to create a global American database of faces, right? If you are born with that face, it is your face. No one can put it on shit. And we're going to put monitoring on every tool and every website and everything with a specialized chip, which makes sure that your face can never be on something. In theory, fine. One, that would never happen. Two, even if it could happen, the privacy implications for that are off the charts.
Not in China.
Right? They're just off the charts. So it's on the other hand, you could say, well, the reality is the future is just this just exists and there's nothing you can do about it. And you'll just have to burn it out of society where no one does it anymore because they're bored of it, which I do think is the other angle. I do think at a certain point, yes, it is trauma. I mean, I'm going to get yelled at for this one too, but people say this is traumatizing. I get that it's traumatizing. It sucks. But at a certain point, you'll just get so desensitized to it because it's just everywhere that it'll stop being, it just is.
Is there any other example of that in history that's happened?
Maybe the best positive case is that maybe everybody stops worrying about this,
Well, and they just stop doing it because it's stupid. It's one of those things where it's they do it now because it's novel. But I actually think having spent a little time on AI porn for pure research purposes, my basic theory is that people are just going to get incredibly bored of it.
Is it better than Sam? Can I ask you some questions? Is it better than real porn?
Well, it's weird because like the images are more perfect, and I'm sure that'll keep evolving. They'll make them less perfect. Like there's going to be like this war of like what it is, but it's like, it's just kind of boring after a point. Right. And I actually think this is true of porn in general, right? Which is like what happens is it gets more and more weird and extreme because it just gets boring. Right. And so it has to get more weird and extreme to stay titillating. But I do think at a certain point, like people are like, well, how do you stop? I mean, like the question is like whether we just as a society, and this is obviously, we're using this in an intellectual way as a metaphor for other things, but it's like people will just stop putting their friends' faces on porn because it's just a dumb thing to do. We've all seen it. It doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of what's going to happen with porn in general. Is like, it's like, people used to, in the Victorian era, it's like seeing an ankle was like scandalous.
Maybe
right? It would be like, oh my God, an ankle was like this very sexualized thing because like you didn't see ankles. Right. Now it's like everyone sees ankles. No one's going to look at your ankle and be like, that's porn, but it used to be. Right. And so at a certain point, do we just like get over it because it's just everywhere?
Do you think that's true though for I think that maybe that's true for random people, but what about like big celebrities and supermodels and like Taylor Swift? Like I can imagine there being like full sites dedicated to like Taylor Swift porn that, like,
but that'll be easier.
Not as like
that's a different story to me. Like that's not the thing to debate here. It's like, should there be like a federal level deep fake porn law, right, that can protect? To me, it's about protecting kids personally. Like, how do you protect teenagers?
Copyright.
I get it, Dave, and I really want to be sensitive to the issue and the challenge. I think they're very real, and so when I get that letter, please remember this caveat, which is I get it. But, look, the best argument for giving away freedom and privacy is always, but think about the kids. It always starts with that, right? And like because no one can argue against it, right? So there are all these things that have massive social privacy implications, or it's like give a mouse a cookie, where you start with this, and then once it's built, you inch it out and inch it out to a very scary place. And it always starts with protecting kids. And like, I get it, but I think if you were like, we're going to have a national registry of faces and like then build chips and phones that like screen them out. I just think it's like, I think it's a really dangerous step to take, right? In terms of like centralizing control, right? And it also in terms of like what it even takes to make a phone. If you're just like, there can be no new phones that don't have this chip, it just sounds like a crazy law for a free society.
You can also argue that some of the AI tools that exist right now for like making you skinnier and like editing kind of your selfies are leading a lot of young girls to like eating disorders, or even young boys to like, what do they call it? They have like a male version. Body dysmorphia. Like the boys are making their like muscles bigger in their photos. And so that's a whole different mental health issue that's created by AI as well.
But that's not new. I think a lot of the
these
stuff,
are normal.
I'm packaging these together though, like that there's a lot of these like weapons being used that don't look like weapons on the outset, right? But are having real impact.
Yeah.
Look, but I think the question is just like, what's the nexus? It's like, look, there are plenty of thin people on Instagram. You don't need AI for that, right? Like that ship has already sailed, right? And like AI might make them thinner or weirder, but I do just wonder at a certain point, it's like, I go back to the burn it through mentality, which is like, the other one is like, yeah, this stuff's been happening forever. AI absolutely elevates it. It makes it easier, makes it more accessible, but it doesn't really fundamentally change the game. It just accelerates it. And like the glass half full view is like, we'll just get bored of it all, right? Like, and it just won't be meaningful. I mean, this is one of my favorite historical, semi-real stories. Someone can check me on the actual history of this. Is there was this hilarious period in British history after they invented gin, where for like 100 years productivity fell and they were just completely wasted.
Yeah, this is a true story.
Wait, this is amazing.
And like what happened was, after like a few generations, I mean, they're still kind of drunk all the time, but like they're less drunk, right? Like the British are not as drunk as they were, right? And like they kind of just grew out of it, right? And so I just wonder to what degree it's like we've historically had like, we grew up in a time where like media, the cost of producing media and what media we saw like just functioned completely differently than it does today. Like we're the old fogies in this. And I'm not saying that the new stuff is all good. In fact, I think a lot of it's really bad and like has these implications, but humans are also extremely adaptable. And I just have to imagine, like, after you've seen a billion porn of your friends that are super thin and perfect and like fake, you're just gonna be like, it's like, who cares? This is like such a stupid thing to look at.
And maybe it sort of follows along the theme we've been talking about, which is just that like IRL, real world experiences, communities, events, et cetera, are going to have even more of an impact over time.
Yeah, it's like the Amish are going to crush it.
Well, it's just that like you want to see your friends in real life, and you're like, you're not that skinny, or like you want that real life communal, non-AI, non-digitized experience even more, right? You crave that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I think it all comes down to like to what you say, like what you end up putting yourself like value in. And I think the idea that we're going to limit digital technology on this stuff is like kind of far-fetched, candidly. So there are places like, I think there's a difference between like state level manipulation, right? Like again, the Chinese TikTok situation is like a different thing. Like that's international politics and like national security. They have to treat that with one set of tools. And like, I do think you have to intervene on that. But I think like, again, I think we go back to like, why don't people talk about like AI porn? It's like, I just don't think there are any answers. And I just think you're going to have to get over it.
What other like themes with AI feel very dangerous, or you called it AI crack before? Like, what do you think is going to get more compulsory in the short term because of AI?
I guess it depends. You look at like oral exams, right, is a thing. Like, I just think like, we'll just go back to oral exams, right? Like everyone's going to cheat on their papers and like, you'll just stand and deliver the way you did 100 years ago in front of a board in some old, wood paneled room. Right. And we'll probably have to, hire more teachers as a result. Fine. Right. Like not a big deal. Right.
That's a good one. Dave, do you have any?
I mean, I think that I was looking at this, there's a Reddit thread that somebody started. I think I'll find it and link to it. I think it's in the OpenAI subreddit, but people were giving all of these examples of ways that they're using GPT to improve their lives and that had the biggest impact. And the thing that kept repeating itself in the thread was people are using it to test out what they would need to say. So one of the examples that kept coming up is people that are going through divorces, and that they are frequently heavily triggered by an email thread with their ex-spouse, and they until they had GPT, they would just respond to the email and it would just cause a fight, and it wasn't good for anyone. Now that they have GPT, they can write what they're going to write, put it in, and then ask GPT to soften the language so that it doesn't cause a fight with the other person. And to me, like, I find that to be subtle but super fascinating. Like, how is this technology already weaving itself into the social fabric in a way that's, probably really productive? Like, most of the people that posted these things said, it changed my life. Like, I don't get as worked up anymore. The relationship between myself and my ex has really improved, and the kids aren't as affected, right? So like, this kind of a use case is really powerful. But I think that the question of how does that start to fit into the social fabric, like, that's the thing that I keep thinking about a lot, which is, how does this technology continually find its way into the social fabric and all of us talking to each other all of the time? And what does that do? Maybe it just improves things. Maybe it like helps us all communicate better. Maybe we can all translate each other better. I used it over the weekend. A couple of friends of mine were having a debate, and I was like, contextually, I really couldn't understand the debate, because one side of the debate was entire area that I really didn't understand. And I had no context for. I had no study in one side of the debate. And so I literally put it in and I just said, can you explain this debate to me and what's going on in it? And it was actually pretty powerful. It was like really, really quick way for me to come up on the debate and start participating. And so that was interesting, right? And so how does, you ask like, what's the compulsive use case that's going to be the most interesting? Like, to me, it's the social one. Like, how does it impact the social communication vector?
Yeah, I think that's I think that is a great answer, Dave. And I love it, because it's like basically a translation thing, right? It's
Yeah.
like translation. People talk about translation as translation in languages. What you're talking about is like emotional translation, or like prepping people and
Maybe.
game theorying, right? Or like game theory. Like I would totally use it to like have hard conversation. Like if you told me that like the future is like there's, you do use this stuff to be like, I'm gonna fire someone. It's like, here's what I'm gonna say. And you're like, all right, what are they gonna say back? And you like game theory it and like train yourself or prepare yourself for hard conversations. Like I think there's like a whole space there that will make things go more smoothly.
Can't you argue
right?
that like TikTok and Instagram should implement this into the comments as a rewrite button option? Like if you're like in it, I feel like that's where so many debates happen now on Threads, Reddit, like social media.
That's where I fire everyone is on TikTok.
Not firing, but like all of this back and forth and people getting canceled.
I'm like, hey, can you
and all
install
this
TikTok
BS.
and comment on this video?
Even like the caption for your post on, what might get you canceled. It has like a cancel emoji that's like blinking. You're like, are you sure you want to rewrite this? Like,
So here's an interesting product question so we're all product people. So in the future AI commenting system, right, which is meant to like de-escalate shit, there's like a few ways you could implement it. One way you could implement it is like you go to comment and it's like, would you rather say this, right? The other way you can say is like, let the person say whatever the hell they want, but then just rewrite the comment so that the person who was commented on sees is like what they want to see, right? And like you just like, it's like, you say, so you could be like, I want all my comments in pirate English and to be super nice. And like they get the comments, but like you just, they're like,
but then it
Or
doesn't.
if you're like, I would like to be triggered as much as possible every
No.
time I read comments.
No one will ever
maybe
say
that's what people want.
yeah, because you're just like, I feel nothing. I'm emotionally dead. Just trigger me everywhere.
Oh my God.
Britt, this is perfect for you.
I know. I can pretty much take anything. Guys, you can throw whatever you want at me. I can take it.
Yeah,
But-
Britt has like, I usually come in to whatever she's watching, on any given night she's watching TV, and it's like the most emotionally damaging
First
thing
of all,
possible.
women just like emotional dramas and shows. And second,
So what are you watching? Is it like a Golden Bachelor?
No, I'm not like a soap opera bachelor person, actually. I mean, I just like deep movies. That could be like stories,
No,
tragedy,
emotional damage.
not like
It's just
horror. Whatever. Okay.
I mean, that would be funny. Like someone should do someone should make like the Brit bot, which is just like you just go on and it tells you about yourself and it just tries
Hold
to
on.
emotionally.
I have another
damage you
point to
as much as
defend
possible.
myself here. Last night, Dave and I went on date night and we're walking by a movie theater. And on the movie theater, there's posters for the new movies coming out. And there's like Napoleon and then there's Disney's Wish. And I'm like, oh, I'd like to go see Wish. Like maybe we could bring the kids. And Dave's like, no way. I got to see Napoleon. I've been dying to see this for so long. It's like this, he turns into this like masculine voice. And I'm like, isn't that just like the same thing as Braveheart, but with Napoleon plastered on the front instead? Like it's just more male fighting each other. Like women mostly don't care about this. And Dave's like, well, women want to go see rom-coms. And I'm just like, this is not about my emotions. This is just like a genre.
Guys, you know what I made my mom watch over the weekend with me? John Wick. She'd never seen it. Talk about a great movie.
Yeah.
Oh, John Wick.
She did like it. She's into it. So good.
John Wick, so good. The whole thing, so good.
All right.
I think the point is just going back to the AI thing, though, is like, look, I mean, we've talked, the other conversation we've had before in some version is the whole idea of like, what is the future social network? Like, what is the crack after the crack of TikTok, right? If TikTok crack is take the world's videos plus whatever China wants to stick in to slightly subvert things, right? And like rank them out and just give you the one you're most likely to watch, right? Then it's an AI-driven algorithm. The next is obviously just like more personalized, right, and more AI-driven content. And so you get to the world where like a social network isn't who do you want to follow, it's who do you want to follow you, right? It gets inverted to the point of like, who do you want feedback from? Who do you want validation from? Like, how do we make this the most AI aggressive thing you can come up with?
Isn't that already TikTok? And I guess this is kind of the direction X is going in as well, where you're basically just like, creating a vector space for each user and then matching that vector to whatever content is the closest.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think the difference is like currently we like try to match the person to the content. I think the future, it's like, one of the biggest problems is getting people to post so they don't get enough feedback, right? If you told me the future of network is you just like say whatever you're going to say and then you get like from an army of bots and like filtered people, like just the comments you and the feedback you want back. Like you optimize, like instead of it optimizing for you to post, instead of optimizing it for like to show you content you want to see, you basically flip it around and just get to the point with AI where like I just am me, but then I just get this like feed of people loving me back constantly?
Wait, I have another product add-on to this because I like where you're headed with this, Sam. Okay, so first, I of course like add my friends and stuff that I want to see me, but then if I pay a little extra, I can request for like interesting, famous people or creatives or whatever to follow me, but they like can set a price it takes for them to follow you. So it's like an inverted business model too.
It's the inversion of everything. So that's basically what's the thing where you paid
Cameo.
celebrities to like Cameo. It's like what I actually want in Cameo is like I basically would love to just say like, look, I'll pay Taylor Swift $1,000 a year, and I just kind of want her to like my shit.
Yeah,
right.
because like maybe it was socially like then it makes me cooler. Or she commented or
well, I had this old product idea. This is like a decade plus ago when I used to bullshit with this about Justin Schaefer. We go to boring dinner parties. You'd be like, this dinner party is very boring. You know, I would love to pay a fee every year to have hilarious characters introduced into my life. So like physical actors would come, and like they'd be like, oh, who's sitting next to you? It's like, oh, it's Mr. Money Pants. You're like, who the hell is that? And it shows up, it's just like a great character, right? And like you have like actors introduced to the real world to like entertain you.
So like
right? And so,
in this world, Sam, are you paying to introduce an AI actor into your friends'
Not
chats
an AI actor.
just to cause problems?
You're digitizing this?
kind of like right now the whole AI thing is like you invite the AI in to like answer stupid questions for you on your message thread, or you ask a question. It's like I would rather just like have AIs around, right? Just like livening up the conversation. You know what I mean? Like
I would pay an AI on Instagram to like make a really funny comment on every post I do. Like really
exactly.
funny.
But the key is I think it's better if you don't exactly know. Like everyone thinks bots are bad. They're like, oh, bots are bad. It's because the bots aren't good, right? Like if instead it was like you had a bunch of bots that were commenting on your shit, but like they were hilarious or funny or engaging or supportive. Like everyone's like trying to create, even Meta, I guess, now has these like characters that you can talk to. It's like, I don't want to talk to the character. I want the character to follow me and then like say hilarious shit, right? In the context of my other comments.
It stands to reason that, digital ads were, or at least social media ads were awful in 2013, right? And so here in 2023, social media ads are amazing, right? Like Instagram just like nails it almost every time. I buy
so much stuff. It's like, this is exactly what I want to see.
And so it stands to reason that 10 years from now, like, bots really suck today. They're awful at their job. And so, 10 years from now, we're going to have a bunch of amazing bots, like, commenting on all of our stuff. And
right now it's like all about like you're lonely, so you like want the bot to talk to you. Like I don't want to talk to the bot. I just want the bot to like interject serendipity and hilariousness into my existing communication.
Okay, I'm going to take it one more level up. I want to actually pay a bot to troll Dave's comments. Like
100%.
every time
That's
Dave comments on anybody else's post, the bot, like I'm in control of the bot and I can change the bot. So it could be the funny bot one time or the sexy bot the other time.
Well, it's also just like, it's so, liking every one of your spouse's posts is just a lot of work, right? Like I just like I would be Instagram would do this tomorrow. It's not even an AI thing. It's just like, there should just be a button, which is like just auto like the following people's posts.
Ooh, that's good.
Right? And like do it with like enough of a like. Don't just do it the second they post. That'd be too obvious. Like I want like some like, oh, you look like you opened the app and liked the post, like, and like people would love that shit. They just want to scale feedback. They just want to feel loved. But to my point about burnout, obviously we're being a little bit silly, is the reason this doesn't exist and like that probably isn't the direction is because people just like stop giving a shit. They'll just tune it out. Right?
Okay, here's another idea though. Okay, because of that, so I agree with you. And we've been talking about this at Offline lately too. Like burnout is becoming more rapid. Our metabolism for content, new things, new products, like is all rapid. So what if there's like...
Well, it's all become commoditized. That's the problem.
But like what if Instagram or whoever had like, this is only going to be available for 1 month. Like this new feature for 1 month is only available and you have to buy it. It's like $5. And then next month we're gonna have a new feature that you can buy.
Well, there is Aaron Sitzig, a dear friend of all of ours, right? And I used to have this conversation about like effectively social capital and inflation, right? And like how you have to like if you think about like a social product, like one of the reasons there's always like a new social product historically that comes out for a new generation is because the social capital structures of the old products get stratified and stuck. And so the new people don't want to play the rigged game, right? Now, what's happened recently with more sophisticated social networks, right, is that they actually introduce new features, right, in a way that opens up new distribution to allow effectively new economic growth. It's like a game. You have to keep playing and adapting. Like, you might have been really big when Instagram was about posting, but like it becomes about stories. And like, unless you keep playing and reinvest, then like your social capital gets washed away, right? And then it's about like something else, right? And so like, you think about these product designs as fashion and as an economy with an inflation rate built into the product, right? And like the different products are part of the social inflation rate and the economic management. So if you told me that like, in order for these things to stay fresh over time, especially as AI comes online or whatever, you just embrace the reality of what these are, right? And that you do need kind of like, they are games. They're games that have some ancillary benefits. I'm not that cynical about social media. I actually love social media. I think it's a super powerful tool, but like, it also is a game, right? And like, if you just introduce and acknowledge that and say we are going to have effectively fast fashion in the game to keep people engaged, it's reasonable, especially if there's any burnout.
The data suggests you're right, Sam, right? Like they do seem to have this, it's a much larger, longer half-life than most games, but you know, it seems like you've got this kind of decade-long half-life in most of these things.
Yeah, and I think that's the tension with a lot of this stuff, actually, to bring it back to TikTok and kind of where we started, which is like, you know, there's like always two ways to think about these things. One is they're just engagement machines and they're toys. And like, you know, I think TikTok is like the current ultimate example of what that looks like. And like, I find that stuff, I mean, I like television. It's kind of hollow though. Like I don't like, it's not like that valuable. It doesn't fill you up, but it is, I get it, right? The other is that actually like human networks are incredibly valuable. Social capital is a real thing that makes the world operate. You know, these things bring you closer to your friends. They help you reinforce kind of like communities and learn and things like that. And I like, obviously I gravitate towards that mission, right? And that component of it. You know, obviously the last many years, I think has much more been an engagement story because it's easier to measure, right? It's easier to optimize and it's more scalable, right? And more profitable because that's how you make money. So like there's a whole bunch of energy towards that. But again, I do wonder that as we go from humans being the source of content to machines being the source of content, if like that entertainment function just gets so disconnected from any fundamental value, right, or any underlying value that it really is just like candy and people just get sick of it at a certain point. Like you can only eat so many Twizzlers.
There is a good example of this already playing out, right? Like I think it was Seth Rogen or somebody in Hollywood, a comedian, was talking about that Hollywood's really broken down into two different communities now. One of them is worldwide visual entertainment, and the other one is storytelling and filmmaking, right? And the worldwide visual entertainment is like most Marvel stuff, Transformers, you know, they're basically like, you know, special effect, like the whole thing is just like this crazy special effects thing going on, right?
CGI.
And it's just all CGI. And then the other side is like, you know, very traditional storytelling, right?
So I could be wrong about this, but my understanding, and this is maybe third hand, is like, aren't we finally hitting the point where like the Marvel shit isn't performing anymore? Like these movies are failing.
That was my point,
like,
actually, that your point is right. And we've got like actually real data right in front of us that, you know, in a prior industry is boring this out. And it's also driven by the, you know, it's not the same technology. It's way dirtier. It's like old school CGI, but like, you know, it's already happening.
Which is, again, I think that's a fine. I mean, again, this goes back to the whole like, what is AI? What are the dangers and how to apply it? And like, I do think you should understand is like, all it is cheaper what we already have. Like, you know, you can make, you know, you can make the Marvel movie. They're just expensive. And the question is like, when everything is a Marvel movie, what does that look like? Because it's cheaper to make Marvel movies, right? And like, I think to that point, again, it's a good connection, Dave. It's like, that is heartening because you're just like, yeah, like we'll see a bunch of weird shit and like weird porn. And like it's gonna get super extreme and strange, and then like most people will just like turn it off because it's boring.
So if you were like the head of a big film studio right now, you're longer on like documentaries and like or script, and I guess anything scripted. I'm just wondering if there's like a segment of storytelling that's going to be more powerful.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's always been. Like I love this saying that the world is just atoms and stories.
But not really, because AI also makes stories.
stories.
We know people in Hollywood that are using AI to write scripts of storylines, because there's like a certain number of plot lines that you can follow in an actual story. And so like they choose one of those, they write a script.
What I'm mostly hearing is that they're using it to increase tension in story, which great story is about, setting up the context for the story, what's the container for the story, and then what are the actual, through lines of the story, and creating tension that, produces a great film or a great story is all about this tension, right? And that's what I think it's
ultimately about. I think it's going to be about connection and community ultimately. And this is why I'm very bullish on creators, right? Is for what it's worth. It's like I think people will build communities. The story medium, sure, you'll make movies. It'll be cheap to make movies, and so you'll make a movie for that. It's like another thing you do, and like you can have good stories in them. But people care about. I think the durable thing will be people connecting with people. I'm an optimist on that, right? And like it'll take a bunch of forms. If you're running a Hollywood studio, it's like, look, in the end of the day, you're looking for an ROI and you have a budget. And if you have to spend $500 million, it's very hard to spend $500 million on an art film successfully, right? You probably are better off kind of like a large VC, just dumping it all into a Marvel film and making 2x if you're, in international distribution. But like, I do think, again, like stepping backwards, like if you're looking for the durable future of this stuff, I'm with Dave. I think it is storytelling, but I think it's storytelling in the context of like human communities people care about and bonds, right? Because everything else is just going to become like sugary noise.
Yeah, and I'll jump off on that, Sam. Back to my original question about the deification of all of this stuff and the questions about what is currently not possible, right? Like, I think a lot of the way we frame what's going on is this very like my personal relationship with the machine, rather than how will this like, machine that understands me very deeply help me connect more deeply into these networks, right? Like the social networking world and the search world were built on these incredible, search and social technologies where it's like you build out this vector space of who the person is, right, in order to develop an advertising market, right? But the person relatively almost never understood what that vector space looked like. And it wasn't ever used to help better connect me. And I worry a little bit that we're already onto this same sort of way of thinking in this new world where it's like we're all talking to these bots, we're talking to these AIs, and the creators are using it to tell better stories potentially, and maybe they're building better communities. But I guess I just like love to see this stuff be used to improve the social connections, like actively, right? Like how do we actively improve networks and actively improve relationships using this technology, and have that be a part of the conversation?
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm all for it. Like, look,
I love it. I think those are good points to end on. I will ask one final question. This one goes out to Sam, who is looking for a date night idea for tomorrow night for Jessica.
Yeah, so I will tell you, I'm like doing my third Prolon fast. This is our product marketing of the day.
I've done Prolon fasting.
I really like it. I've done it twice this year.
Why do you like it? Explain to the crowd.
Yeah, what is it supposed to do, and why do you like it?
It's a fasting mimicking thing, whether that's true. Basically, it's an extremely calorie restricted diet for 5 days. And you feel shitty on day 2, which is the day I'm on. And by day 3 and 4, you feel fucking amazing. And I'm a big fan of it. But the problem that does is that it does kind of screw up date night, because I'm a pretty boring date.
Because you get like 5 olives and some crackers to bring to date night with you.
No, so it's 5 p.m. where I am, and I've eaten all I have left, Britt, on the day that I'm allowed to eat is this one packet of disgusting.
You always got to do your soup with the crackers. It feels like a bigger meal. That's the key.
No, I need the crackers separately.
Okay, all right. Everyone has a different Prolon strategy.
I even ate the little chocolate bar. I'm down to the last thing, and then I got to go to sleep. But I do really like this, by the way. But I'm like, I don't have a good date night thing. And so like, I was thinking mini golf. Can't find any good ones in the South Bay. I was thinking we just go play tennis.
But do you want to like play a sport when you're low on energy?
Oh, it's fine. I ran 9 miles yesterday after the first day. It's fine.
Oh, I see. So
you have plenty of energy.
Okay, so I think what you do is you go out with Jess to dinner and you're bored, she's bored, and then all of a sudden a character shows up and sits down with you and starts like just making conversation.
Professor Moneybanks?
Professor Moneybanks comes to dinner and just starts making conversation. Jess is super freaked out and like not really sure what's happening. And then you like later let her know. But
and she wonders, where did this idea come from?
Look, seriously, last question. I want to ask my parting question, which is like, if there was a service that cost $10,000 a year and you signed up for it and you put your calendar into it and you put some preferences in, and then the deal was that once a month, a hilarious character would be introduced to your life, right? Who just show up. You don't know when they're coming. You don't know where they're sitting, whatever, but they would be hilarious and wonderful. Would you pay $10,000 a year?
So it's like the game mini. It's like the game is like
it's not a game, kind of, but again, it's not like a full deception. It's just like, you know that gala is going to be fucking boring. But then the whole year
you have anxiety because you're not sure if any of these weird people near you are
it's also
the character.
Like it makes your life better because you're like, yeah, you're not sure if the guy next to you is
it's
just
like you're playing Clue
hilarious.
Forever. You're like, so what are you doing here at this dinner party? I think that's good. You know, next week is my birthday. So maybe I'll devise something fun for that.
I feel like a lot of actors in Hollywood, this could be like a thing for them.
Well, especially
right?
like the actors C and D list actors.
This could be good in LA.
Yeah.
I also think this could be, you know, people are like, what's the future of employment? And it's like, this is the future of employment.
All right, we're gonna end on that. And as your moderator, I'd just like to say thank you both for coming to the table today with some great opinions and ideas. Jessica, if you're listening, we hope we did you proud. We don't really know where this episode went, but
I think we did a very nice job.
You know, we had some product ideas. The porn thing's definitely going to hit with some SEO results on the podcasting app. So we're there. Thanks to everyone listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us some feedback, add reviews, 5 stars. Special shout out to our back channel, as always, for keeping us on our toes and everything happening in Silicon Valley and beyond. And we will see you all next week. Take care, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.